In ancient times, the Hylians used to have the ability to cast powerful magic at will, but over the years this ability has faded and is now only used by the bloodlines closest to the goddesses and a select few others. An event that seems to have happened before even the events of Skyward Sword, the earliest in the official Zelda timeline. Hey there friendos, Newbornkilik here, and today we will be asking the question, what if the Hylians never had magic and were forced to develop and rely on technology instead? Now naturally this would change their daily lives and even their fight to survive in the beginning. But this raises so many questions. Would the royal family still be in power? Would the Hyrulean Civil War turn out differently? How would the introduction of technology affect the other races in the area? Now please do keep in mind we will be looking exclusively at The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for our little thought discussion here. We will be pulling elements from other games such as Skyward Sword earlier, but mostly we're going to be thinking about what would happen during the events leading up to, during, and a little bit after Ocarina of Time. Now naturally this is a pretty complicated subject to think about as there are many holes that we have to fill in ourselves. However, after thinking about it, it seems like there is a mix of good and plenty of bad that could come out of this one tiny change to The Legend of Zelda. Now first off, we need to think of Sheikah Tech. This exists in the Legend of Zelda universe and is prominently featured in Breath of the Wild. However, what if I told you that there were remnants of Sheikah Tech in Ocarina of Time as well? Maybe you caught on, but the Sheikah Stones are exactly that. While the exact purpose of the Sheikah Stones is a bit up to debate, my headcanon is that these little Sheikah Stones allowed the Sheikah to communicate between these grottos across great distances. Bear in mind, most of the grottos are these sort of like secret little hidey holes that only certain people would know about. Hey, even to this day, I'm still finding grottos that I had no idea existed. On a side note, I might mention the Lens of Truth as it does have relations to the Sheikah, but that uses magic, so it's a little bit further from what we're looking for. First, I think we should take a look at probably the best outcome of this potential little theory crafting idea, and that's that the technology could become available to commoners, for a profit of course. Interestingly enough, this could lead to a world much like we have today. Everyone's running around with their phones, obviously at that point they probably wouldn't have phones, but eventually they would likely get there. On a side note, how do you think Azora would carry a phone? Anyway, assuming this technology were more commonplace, it could lead to some sort of arms race between the different sides just before the Hyrulean Civil War. Speaking of which, I suppose we should somewhat explain that, although the info is what I would say vague at best. A few years before the events of Ocarina of Time, there was this massive war, and while the specifics again are pretty vague, it's generally accepted that the war is what got Link, a Hylian, into the Kokiri Forest. That is canon 100%. And the nations all eventually united under the banner of the royal family. Again, canon. However, this was apparently a pretty strained treaty, and the different races pretty much kept to themselves. This is backed up by the fact that you have to have Zelda's Lullaby to get to talk to really any of the leaders of the different races, except the Gerudo, but they just chopped up the bridge anyway. This would imply that there is still quite a bit of distrust between the different races and the Hylians. Anyway, I believe in the event that there was a Hyrulean Civil War, I'm pretty sure the Hylians would still win in this timeline, and it might even be more one-sided than it was before. Now, we do know that the Sheikah were wiped out during the Hyrulean Civil War, so clearly the other races were able to fight back, and pretty effectively to almost wipe out an entire race. Given that the Sheikah are the creators of the Sheikah Tech, naturally, the royal family would have access to the best stuff available. Even if they shared it out to the world, you always keep the best stuff for yourself. On the other hand, there is a potential that this may have actually helped to prevent the Hyrulean Civil War. Now, this is just loose speculation, as is pretty much everything else here, but maybe the sharing of power might have helped distract people or just make their lives a little bit easier. It's impressive how much a simple trade route can help with relations between different areas. Maybe we can finally get King Zora to stop rubbing his, fishy parts all over all the water of Hyrule in exchange for, an iPhone or something. Again, I think this is probably the best timeline we could hope for, unless they develop nukes and everyone just dies outright. Which, knowing the way that power corrupts people, that may very well happen. Anyway, idea number 2, and this is the one that I subscribe to, is that the royalty would probably hoard the Sheikah technology for themselves. Now, This timeline is pretty much a carbon copy of the one that we have right now in Ocarina of Time, except the war is over much, much sooner, and many of the Sheikah could have survived. I mean, think about it. The Sheikah died protecting the royal family, but if their technology was more developed, they might not have lost so many numbers in the war. It is pretty unclear if the Sheikah actually used their technology in the war or if they were trying to keep it a secret, which we'll get to in a little bit, but this line of thought makes me think that maybe the tech as it existed in Ocarina of Time, again the Sheikah stones were mostly used for communication and weren't necessarily weaponized yet, or at least they didn't want people to know that it was weaponized. So likely at this point the technology may have been in its infancy. This is supported by the fact that in Skyward Sword, again the first game in the timeline, Impa can be seen using magic to assist Princess Zelda. I imagine that the Sheikahs saw the magic fading and decided to create a technology to sort of replace it. The absence of this magic could have either created the opening to make the advancements to technology much faster, or completely ruined the idea of Sheikah technology, as there was simply nothing to replace. They wouldn't have even had the idea to put the technology together to replace anything is what I mean. Regardless of what you take away, obviously, these secrets all died with the Sheikah, potentially during that war. However, I want to leave you with one final thought. The royal family seems to have no knowledge of this technology. It was a secret to everyone. Maybe this technology was sort of a contingency plan if the royal family ever lost favor with the goddesses. Hello everybody, Editor Newbornkilik here. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons and Twitch supporters and channel members for all the support. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving it with a like or checking out one of the other Zelda theories or other videos that I have. I have like 4 channels at this point, so if you like a style of content, I probably have it. Anyway, with that said, I'm Newbornkilik, and I will see you in the next one. I'm out.